As I was saying, these answers they come from Charles Darwin, or the followers of Charles Darwin, the scientists. And they have concluded that our existence is an accident, a cosmic accident. And this whole universe came into So this whole big universe has come into existence just by coincidence or by interacting of molecules leading to a cosmic accident. So these molecules, they self-organized to form molecular machines and evolved into human consciousness. And when you ask the questions about the human consciousness, then they answer that actually consciousness is a result of cells interacting in the brain which is temporary. And at the time of death, all these cells, they disorganize and consciousness ceases to exist. So these are the answers we get. And we are just machines made up of molecules lost in empty space. The Vedic literatures, they give different answers to these questions. Now the question is, why should we give any attention to what any of these books have to say? And there comes the topic of Vedic Epistemology. For that, we need to understand the science of how we receive knowledge, which is a branch of philosophy. So we get knowledge from different evidences or pramanas. The first one being pratyaksha praman, evidence from sense perception, conclusions made from what you see or what your senses can perceive. And the second one is anumana praman. There is evidence from logical interference or inference. If it is like this, then it must be like that. So if I hear a sound of a motor and I cannot see anything, then I assume that there must be a kind of a motor vehicle outside. So modern science is based on pratyaksha and anumana praman, because the scientists, they observe the world with their senses and instruments. They make measurements and reason about them, making conclusions that it must be like this and that must be the cause for everything. Now, the problem with this is the senses are limited and imperfect. And the mind that we use for logic is subject to cheating, illusion, and committing mistakes. So therefore, the conclusions based on pratyaksha and anumana praman cannot be trusted with absolute certainty. Fortunately, the Vedic epistemology, according to the Vedic epistemology, there is another way of receiving knowledge, which is Shabda Praman, evidence from transcendental sound. Based on the idea that there is a supreme conscious personal being who is the source of everything and who has complete knowledge of everything. The supreme intelligent conscious person is capable of communicating knowledge in the form of transcendental sound, which can be captured in literary form and transmitted to human society. And that knowledge is beyond the limitations of imperfect senses or the imperfect mind that we use for logic. Therefore, the Shabda Praman becomes the ultimate source of knowledge for the followers of the Vedic tradition. Um, to understand this better, we can use the example of visiting a house. So, when you visit a house and you want to access the restroom, so there are and let us make use of the understanding Praman, Anumana Praman, and Shabda Praman. With Pratyaksha Praman, one through his senses tries to come up with a conclusion that uh, there is a door, and because there is a door, because I can see a door, and because it is in this corner of the room, maybe there is a bathroom over there. With Anumana Praman, you're making a logical inference that if there is a door, there definitely must be another room or a bathroom behind. But the problem with these two uh, ways is that you end up opening every door in the house in order to find the bathroom, and which is too taxing. At the same time, uh, it is not practical. So rather, you can use the third option, which is Shabda Praman. And all you have to do is just ask the owner of the house that where is the bathroom, and he'll guide you to a door. And behind that door, lo and behold, is a bathroom. So that could be one way of understanding the three ways of receiving knowledge. So, what does the Vedic literature have to say for the question, where do we come from? So, I want to guide you all to this verse in Bhagavad-Gita 15.7. Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. That the living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So, Lord Krishna, who here is the supreme conscious and intelligent being, directly states to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra in the purport to the text, where Prabhupada writes, and I read, every living entity as an individual soul has his personal individuality and a minute form of independence. By misuse of that independence, one becomes a conditioned soul. The conditioned soul is covered by the material body with the mind and the senses. And when he is liberated, this material covering perishes, but his spiritual body manifests itself in its individual capacity. So we gather that we are originally eternal souls, and having come down from that position, we are now covered by subtle material mind and gross material body, which is made up of senses. As you can see in this image, there are the three layers. You have the soul, which is made up of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. And then you have the subtle body, which is mind, intelligence, and false ego. And surrounding that, you have the gross body, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, which is made of gross elements. Now, the symptom of the soul is consciousness. It is not produced by matter. So, the concept of consciousness being chemicals interacting in the brain, uh, caused by a cosmic accident is not a rational explanation for consciousness. But Bhagavad-Gita in the second chapter states that consciousness is a symptom of a soul present in the body. Just like uh, you may try to hit, uh, I can try to hit this lamp, for example, and this lamp may not respond to me because its consciousness is shrunken, or perhaps it doesn't have a consciousness, it's only made up of matter. But if someone tries to hit me, I will definitely respond. I will definitely respond because I am a soul which is present in this body, and because I am present in this body, therefore it infers that I have consciousness, and I will respond when someone touches me or hits me. So in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna is saying in a very simple way that there is a conscious soul, and it is covered by a subtle material mind and gross material body. And in his book, the Jaiva Dharma, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that the Sthula Sharira, so the outside body is called the Sthula Sharira. And then you have the subtle body, which is known as Sukshma Sharira. And then finally you have the soul, which is known as Nitya Sharira. So in the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 29th chapter, there is a description of the subtle body. And I read, as long as there exists the subtle material body composed of intelligence, mind, senses, sense objects, and the reactions of material qualities, the consciousness of false identification and its relative objective, the gross body, exist as well. So sometimes Krishna explains things in a simple manner. Mind, matter, consciousness, or soul. But sometimes Krishna explains in more detail what is meant by these things. So the subtle material body consists of mind, intelligence, false identification, ego, and subtle senses. According to the Sankhya philosophy, there are 5 knowledge acquiring senses and 5 working senses. So the knowledge acquiring senses are vision, sound, taste, smell, and touch. Now we may think in a rather more simplistic or a superficial way that the hearing sense is this fleshy ear that we have, this appendage that is sticking out on the side of the head, or the tasting sense, which is the tongue. But actually, there are subtle senses grouped around the mind which make use of these ears, the eyes, the nose, the tongue, and the skin. So these subtle senses are a part of the subtle body, which make use of the working senses. The hand, the legs, the voice for speaking, the organs for generation and evacuation. We can say in a superficial way that the arm is actually grasping, or they are the working senses. But that's not the complete understanding. The arm or the hand is simply an instrument that the subtle working sense or the grasping sense, which is a part of the subtle body, makes use of. Yeah, there are many cases where when a person loses his limb, they still feel like they can grab something. They still feel they have a limb. So this is a medical phenomenon. It's called a phantom limb phenomenon. So this subtle body is quite complex, but we can simplify it and understand that it has, uh, it's basically a mental body. And sometimes Krishna expresses it like that, just to simplify it. And we can compare this perhaps to a computer analogy, where the material body can be compared to uh, a software. The material body, the gross body, can be compared to a hardware, and the subtle material body can be compared to a software which the user, the conscious self, can use to interact with the hardware and employ it for different purposes. So, that, according to the Vedic literatures, is who we are in this material world. So we are not simply machines made of molecules. There's more to us than DNA or RNA or all the different molecules that make up the body. There is also this whole subtle mental apparatus beyond that, the non-material conscious self, the soul, Atma, which is ultimately part of God, the supreme soul. And that is the source of consciousness. Consciousness is a symptom of the soul, and it is not something that is produced out of chemicals interacting in the brain. So now that we have understood this concept, that brings about uh, a very interesting topic of the multi-level cosmos. So this leads to a certain idea that there is one level of cosmos which is dominated by gross material elements, and it is inhabited by beings adapted to the conditions there. And that's where we find ourselves now. So you can think of the Earth planet as a gross material element, or the gross material cosmos. And beyond that, there is a more subtle level of cosmos dominated by the subtle material elements, and it is inhabited by beings adapted to the conditions there. And in terms of the Vedic cosmology, they can be called as devas or higher rishis. And in other cultures, they have different names. Like in Christianity, we call them angels, or in Islam, they can be known as jinns. And beyond that, there is the non-material level of existence, the spiritual and transcendental level of existence, which is the level of pure consciousness, as Srila Prabhupada sometimes says, the Brahman level of existence. So this is inhabited by beings adapted to the conditions there in those worlds. So liberated souls, in other words, who are free from contact with the subtle and gross elements. They are the kind of people who reside in the non-material spiritual realms. So sometimes in the Vedic literature, the levels of existence are described in a more detailed manner. So like 14 planetary systems. But just for the sake of simplicity, I'm just focusing on three levels. So you can group them under each category. So it is important to understand that this Vedic universe is a consciousness-based universe. So it's not just some balls of rock and flaming gas that is floating around in the void. The whole universe is designed for a conscious experience, and it has more in common with what goes on in the world of gaming, where artificial realities or virtual realities are created for people to experience. So, in the games, we have this concept of avatars, a digital version of yourself, which you can operate in a VR gaming situation. So the universe is pretty much like that. Krishna and his demigod assistants are the ultimate virtual reality programmers and developers. And they have done it already to perfection. So, this Vedic universe is a consciousness based universe which has been deliberately produced to give conscious selves a certain experience. So, for example, if you go and ask uh, this person whose name is he's called Notch, Marcus person who created Minecraft. So uh, he had to put a lot of work into just to give people that ability to experience different realities uh, where they can do things in their virtual world. So the Vedic Cosmos is also like that. It is very important to remember that this is a consciousness based universe. So it's meant to deliver certain types of experiences based on the conscious self. So if you want to experience the ultimate reality, then you have got to go to the topmost level. So just like how in a game, if you just picture a simple game, you know, there would be a concept of you playing till you go to the next level. So if you attain a certain level of expertise, then you go to another realm, another level where there are new experiences and there are new entities. And if you can deal with them, then you go to another level, and so on and so forth. You keep ascending. But the point is, it is according to the person's consciousness that one is going to get a certain experience. So the supreme experience is at the topmost, which we would call as Krishna consciousness, which, as per this diagram, would be the non-material spiritual realm. So now there are features, different features of life in the multi-level cosmos. So just treating it very simply, we have travels between levels. So the Vedic literature describes different ways of being able to move from one level of the cosmos to another. And one way is by vimanas or vessels, which you can compare to modern day spacecrafts or aircrafts. So, for example, there was a Vimana that took Dhruva Maharaj from the earth through the subtle material realms into Vaikuntha planets. So, the airplane came down from the spiritual world, uh, and as it is described in the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Dhruva Maharaj, towards the end of his life, he had perfected his meditation, and he was in an isolated place when he saw this Vimana descending towards him uh, like a shining full moon. So you can just imagine seeing a full moon in a clear night sky and just imagine it coming down to you. So that was the experience. So this Vimana descends to Dhruva Maharaj, and he saw that there were two pilots uh, who piloted the aircraft. As you can see in the picture, these were residents of Vaikuntha planets uh, who look very similar to the Lord. They all have four-hand forms. So Dhruva Maharaj, he circumambulated the aircraft before getting on board. And he noticed as he was circumambulating, his body transformed until it was it was glowing like gold. So that was his spiritual body, and he boarded the aircraft on Earth and was taken through different levels of the cosmos until he reached Vaikuntha. So the Vedic literature describes how beings can travel throughout the cosmos without the aid of such vehicles. Uh, for example, the great sage Narada Muni, who's able to move freely throughout the different levels of cosmos because he has a spiritual body which is capable of doing that. So as long as one is entrapped within this gross body and subtle body, uh, the elements of the gross and the subtle dominate, and you are kept onto that level. You're sort of entrapped on that level, uh, and you're imprisoned to those energies. So if you want to go to another level, you must transform your energies. And if you want to go to the subtle material level, uh, the planets of the demigods, then you must transform yourself. And Vedic literature, they give us systems for doing that. And in fact, a lot of the Vedic literature is about how we transform our consciousness and energies and go to the planets of the demigods. Of course, Krishna doesn't recommend that in the Bhagavad-Gita because these so-called heavenly planets are all temporary and limited. And the ultimate goal is to go to Vaikuntha. So Narada Muni, being a liberated soul, could freely move around the different levels of cosmos. And ultimately, we want to be able to do that, where we are capable of moving through all the levels of the cosmos. Now, another feature of life in this multi-level cosmos is transmission of information between different levels. In Bhagavad-Gita, Lord Krishna, he explains, Shri Bhagavan Vacha Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Abhyaya. So he spoke in the very beginning, and by the way, Lord Krishna, for those who are new, is an entity from the topmost level of reality. So the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, they originate with Lord Krishna on that level of reality. And he communicated them, this knowledge, to Vivaswan, the sun god, who is an entity from the level of the subtle material elements, or the middle level in the multi-cosmos. And then Vivaswan, he speaks the same knowledge. Vivaswan manave praha manur ikshvakave bravit. That Vivaswan speaks this knowledge and transmits it to Manu, the forefather of mankind, who then further transmitted the same knowledge to his son Ikshvaku, who was a king on earth. So you get a transmission of information from the highest level of reality down to the subtle material level, down to the level of the gross world, which we now inhabit. So this information is most important and relevant for us because it tells us who we are. The people are dealing with incredible amounts of information these days. So how useful is that information? Rather, this information which is being communicated by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is actually the most important information, and it should have the highest priority in human society. not just something we have to wonder about in our spare time if we are interested in such things. And sometimes in the Vedic cosmos, this information can be transmitted in unusual manners. There are listed in Srimad Bhagavatam a lot of mystic powers. Of those mystic powers, there are two of them. One is called Durdarshana, the ability to see at a great distance. And the other one is Durshavana, which is the ability to hear at a great distance. And that's how we have the Bhagavad-Gita, which we are familiar with, because there was a blind king, Dhritarashtra, uh, who was the father of some of the participants in the battle of Kurukshetra. And he wanted to know what was happening in Kurukshetra because it was going to be a very important battle between his sons and the sons of Pandu. And Lord Krishna was their ally. So there was a lot at stake, and he was interested in knowing what was going on. But the problem was that he was not only blind, he was seated some distance in his palace in Hastinapur. So his secretary, Sanjaya, by the mercy of Vyasadeva, he had this power of Durdarshan and Durshavan. So with that, he could perceive what was going on in the battle of Kurukshetra and what Krishna and Arjuna were talking about. And he related that to the king, and it was set down in writing by Vyasadeva, and that's how we have the Bhagavad Gita today. Another feature of life on the multi-level cosmos is beings on higher levels can influence forms or biological forms on the lower levels. So, for example, Lord Chaitanya, who is Lord Krishna himself in the guise of a devotee, he comes from the topmost level of reality. And he is also the supreme, conscious, all-powerful being. So during his pastimes on earth, he cured a Brahmana named Vasudeva, who had leprosy. So this Brahmana, he was severely disfigured. And simply by his touch, Lord Chaitanya had transformed his biological form. So this is what I mean by beings on higher levels can influence the biological forms on the lower levels. And not only that, they have the ability to manufacture and create forms, which they do. Again, we have to remember this concept that the Vedic cosmos is a consciousness-based cosmos, like a VR system. And the higher beings, they not only create realities and locations, but they also give them forms through which they can have these experiences by interacting with these material elements. So the higher beings, ultimately beginning with Lord Krishna and his demigod assistants and the Prajapatis, they have concluded that they should offer the conscious selves in the material world 8.4 million different kinds of bodies. Sometimes the word species is used, but species is an English word, and it doesn't occur in the Sanskrit language, because the word that is used in Sanskrit is jata, which is referring to body or to be born. So even in modern biology, what's a species, what's not a species, it's but a controversy. So the different kinds of Vedic bodies may not exactly correspond to what the modern scientific definition of species are. But again, consciousness being based universe. They are forms created to give different experiences. So the controller of the Vedic Cosmos have decided to offer 900,000 forms of aquatic experiences, 1 million kinds of flying bird experiences, 100,000 kinds of insect experiences, 2 million kinds of animals, 2 million kinds of plants and trees experiences, uh, 3 million kinds of animal experiences, and finally 400,000 kinds of human experiences. Of course, we are talking about, we are not just talking about the earth, we're talking about the entire universe. And actually, we have unlimited universes, so it all includes. So they not only influence, but they also manifest forms once according to a master plan by Lord Brahma. So there can be a progression of conditioned souls from one type of experience to another in different type of body. Each material body is limited to its duration and it lasts a certain amount of time, and then after that it ceases to exist. But the important thing is the soul does not cease to exist. It will just get another gross physical body. So there may be an evolution of the soul through different bodies, but there is no evolution of the body itself. So Prabhupada makes it very clear. It is not that the ape evolves and becomes into a human, or the ape body evolves into a human body, but the soul can evolve from an ape body and it can take birth into a human body. Rather, it's a soul that moves from one body to another. So the human form is considered to be the most developed form, because in the human form we can actually understand what is our real position uh, and what are the practical steps necessary to realize that ultimate state of consciousness. So in his book Jaiva Dharma, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he explains different levels of consciousness, which I will read. So the first kind of experience or awareness is trees and plants, and the kind of consciousness is called achadita or covered, because they don't express much. It's not very much expressed. The second is insects or animal bodies, sankuchita or shrunken, not expanded to its full limit. Third is ordinary human life, mukulita, budding. So in the springtime, just before the flowers begin to sprout, you have tiny little buds that shoot out from the stem called buds. So that is what we are referring to. The fourth being the person who's inquiring about the absolute truth. And that consciousness is called vikshita or blooming. So, as it is said in the Vedic literatures, Athato Brahma Jigyasa, that now is the time to inquire about the absolute truths. For human beings who are rising above animal propensities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, the consciousness of such a person is vikashita. And finally, the last one, which is self-realized souls. Their consciousness is Purna Vikshita, which is fully blossomed. These are, however, liberated souls, you know, and it's in the human form of life that we can raise our consciousness to the highest level possible. And it's a great responsibility. We will always have free will and independence. Uh, I would like to show everyone this image. So when I, of course, not this exact image, but when I opened Bhagavad-Gita for the first time, I stumbled upon this particular image. And it got me thinking. When we have to understand that, where we are and what our destination is, because people have no idea where they're going, or where their actions could lead them. So this painting was very powerful, and it burnt its way in my heart. Uh, I was knowing that if I kept on with a certain activity, then it would lead me to one direction. And whereas if I engaged in another activity, uh, it would take me into another more desirable direction. So Krishna is never going to take away our free will. Now, we are always going to have a choice whether to pursue the upwards or the downward path. So in the Vedic cosmology, we learn what we really are, that we are not this gross material body or the subtle body, but ultimately we are the soul, the conscious self, Atma. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we learn what is the identity of that soul, that Nitya Sharira. So in the Madhya Leela of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is this verse, Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishnera Nitya Das, that the form of the soul is that of eternal servant of Krishna. And that ultimately is what we are meant to realize. In the Shikshashtakam prayers that everybody recites every day, it's very wonderful. I would like to tell everyone on the group, it's very nice to hear everyone chanting the Shikshashtakam prayers every day, because the last verse of the Shikshashtakam prayer, not not included in what we chant, but the pranama towards the last, it states that when we recite the Shikshashtakam prayers daily, uh, the tendency to increase our love for Godhead, or the tendency to inquire about Krishna, it increases daily. So everyone who's chanting the Shikshashtakam prayers, I would like to offer my humble obeisance to all of them, because not just someone who's reciting it, but even those who hear the Shikshashtakam prayers, they get the benefit. So thank you, everyone. So this verse of the Shikshashtakam prayer, Ai Nanda Tanuja Kinkara, the translation of the verse is, "O my Lord, O Krishna, O Maharaj Nanda, I am your eternal servant, but because of my fruitive actions, I have fallen into this horrible ocean of birth and death. Now please be causelessly merciful to me. Consider me a particle of dust at your lotus feet." So Lord Chaitanya is a form of a devotee, and in form of a devotee is teaching us how to pray, how to understand our position. So God Himself is giving us an example of how we must be, how we should understand our position. So all we have to do is just follow. Ultimately, we are meant to exist on the level of Krishna consciousness, the spiritual level of reality. So if we are not fit to exist there, we can exist on the level of subtle material elements, which is nicer compared to where we are. But still, it is a part of the material world and it is temporary. Or if the conscious soul isn't even fit for the subtle realms, then it can go down to the level of the gross material elements, with a body made of gross physical elements. So we have a spiritual identity, a swarupa, which is covered by subtle and gross elements. But this can be reversed, and consciousness can be restored to its actual original pure state. And that is the actual purpose of the different systems of yoga and meditation that are mentioned in the Vedic literature, if you follow them all the way throughout. So, in Bhagavad-Gita, Lord Krishna explains what perfection of meditation and yoga is. In the 6th chapter, in the final verse, Yoginam api sarvesham matgate nantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yo mam samayukta tamo matah. That all yogis, the one with great faith who abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most he's the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So I guess if it's Krishna's opinion, then we must take it a bit seriously, shouldn't we? Rather, if it be my opinion. So, Bhakti Yoga is the perfection of all yogas. And the principal practice of Bhakti Yoga system is chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And that can take us from the low level material cosmos to the spiritual level of reality. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So that concludes the topics that I wanted to touch upon for the first day. Now, having that aside, I also wanted to explain a few things which we need to know for the sessions coming up tomorrow and day after. So the most important one which I wanted to talk about right off the bat, I was referring, even in the past, whenever I was giving some of the lectures, I was referring to this particular book. I don't know if you can see it, the Vedic Philosophy for Students. It's a book by Srila Prabhupada, but this book, I was trying to find an electronic copy of this book because many people in the group were requesting it. I remember Pratik Prabhu was asking for a copy of this book, but I couldn't find it because most of the books online are either published by the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust or they are found on the Veda base. And this book is by Sri Sitaram Seva Trust. So I couldn't find an electronic copy, and it's actually a good read. It's excellent. It kind of talks about the most basic concepts that are touched upon in Bhagavad Gita in a more simplistic manner. And I shall be talking about universal time because this is something which we will be briefly going through while we are discussing the details of the cosmology. So one is the explanation of the different cycles or yugas, talking most of speaking especially of the four important yugas, that is Satyuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and Kali Yuga. So Satyuga, you can start off, maybe if you want a simple explanation, you can start off with Kali Yuga, which is about 432,000 years. And then you multiply that by 2, and then you get the duration of Dwapar Yuga, which is about 864,000 years. And you multiply that by 2, and you get the duration for Treta Yuga, and so on and so forth. So like that, All of that put together, it's about 4.32 billion years. And Lord Brahma lives for 100 such years, and each year consists of 12 months and 30 days. And his night is also of the same length. So all of those calculations put together, uh, it comes up to a big number, a big fat number, 311 trillion years, 40 billion Earth years. So again, all of these cycles put together makes up one Divya Yuga, and there are 71 such cycles of Divya Yugas. After 71 cycles, all the demigods, there is a complete dissolution, or the Mahapralaya, that happens. And within each Divya Yuga, there is about 28, uh, there are 14 manvantras. Every day of Brahma is divided into 14 manvantras. And we are currently on the 7th manvantara. And as per the cycles, we are on the 28th cycle. So just so you know, we are somewhere in between. So Lord Krishna, he appears once in a day of Brahma. And Lord Chaitanya also appears once in a day of Brahma, following Krishna's appearance. And the last Krishna appeared was 5,000 years ago, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared roughly about 500 years before. So these are some basic calculations that one needs to keep in mind as we delve into the topics tomorrow. Another very important thing, uh, we will be talking about yojanas. So it is important that we all understand what is this measurement, this unit of measurement that we are using. So in the ancient times, uh, they used to calculate yojanas based on the concept of how much distance can an ox cart cover during a day, and that used to average about 8 to 8.5 miles. So just keep this in mind, that when they describe yojanas, you just have to multiply it by 8 or 8.5, and you get the distance in miles. That After that, another important concept. Okay. Now, don't let this whole diagram fool you. Uh, we don't need to focus on all this. All we have to focus on is this aspect. So you can see this. I'm trying to highlight it if I can. Uh, Talking about this. So the Purusha avatars. This is very important. That first you have the four primary expansions. That is Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and then from there are several expansions, and then finally from Anantashesh, it further expands into three Purusha avatars, namely Karana Vishnu, Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, and Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. So these are different Vishnus. So who is Karanadakshayi Vishnu? Karanadakshayi Vishnu is, you can refer to him as Maha Vishnu. Let's see. Right here. Maha Vishnu. And this is the same Vishnu from who's floating in the causal ocean, from whom innumerable universes appear from the pores of his body. So this is that same Vishnu. You must have seen pictures. So those of you all who saw the invitation pictures for the class today, that was the picture of Mahavishnu, where there are multiple universes that are appearing from the pores of his body, and he is floating in the causal ocean. And then Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, he enters into each and every universe, and he is seated on the thousand hooded uh, Vasuki or Anantashesh, and it is from his uh, belly button that a lotus sprouts and Brahma is born. So if you ever want to identify who's Garbhodakshayi, just look for a lotus flower that is coming from his belly. And that's when you know this is Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. And then the last one, which is Shirodakshayi Vishnu. So Shirodakshayi Vishnu can be perceived as two kinds of entities. One is a Paramatma who dwells in each and every creature. Also, Shirodakshayi Vishnu, uh, he is a further expansion, and he enters into each and every atom or molecule, and he's present there. Also, there is a localized feature of Kshirodakshayi Vishnu in the pole star or the Dhruva Loka. Uh, and there it is said that there is a milk ocean present, and that is the same place where all the demigods they approach the Lord. So this is the Vishnu that all the demigods approach. Perhaps I can show an image. So we can see this image I'm trying to share with everyone. Mm. So that is Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. Let me try to zoom in. So that is the milk ocean, and the Lord resides in the milk ocean, seated on Anantashesh, and all the demigods during a time of crisis, they approach Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. This is also the same planet that was given to Dhruva Maharaj, because this planet doesn't get destroyed during partial dissolution. So when all the planets get destroyed, this planet continues to exist until the final dissolution or the Maha Pralaya. So the Lord gave his own abode to Dhruva Maharaj. And this is Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. So he is resting on the Garbhodaka ocean, and from his belly sprouts a lotus, and seated on that lotus is Lord Brahma. And Lakshmi Devi, his eternal consort, is massaging his feet. So this is all we need to know for tomorrow. Uh, so at this point, uh, we have completed the introduction for the Vedic cosmology. I thank everyone for patiently listening. Let us have some questions. Let us have some questions for about 15-20 minutes because we have some time.
Prabhuji, I would like to ask a question.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. In fact, you are telling that we can take birth in not only this planet, or it can be to anywhere in any universe, right?
Let me understand your question. So you're asking me that you can take birth in any universe, not just our universe. Is that your question?
Because you mentioned in while explaining about this is different the different species and this thing that it's not considered only here, but it can be anywhere because the universe is unlimited. It can be anywhere. Now that means like uh, uh, Earth, the planet Earth, where Krishna appeared. So this planet is also considered to be the most can be considered as most auspicious, right? Sorry, sorry, Prabhu. Hello.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Can you hear? Can you hear me?
The answer to your question would be, Prabhuji, that these different species of life and the body that we receive, it can be in any universe. We are not just limited to this universe. Of course, every universe has their own quota of Mahat Tattva. So, what is Mahat Tattva? Since you brought up this question, I would like to introduce everyone uh, to this concept of Mahat Tattva. So, as described in the first canto, second canto, as well as further on, that at the time of creation, this is particularly explained in the fifth canto, that at the time of creation, Maha Vishnu, who's present, he glances upon the material energy, pradhana, and all the souls who have been present in the material world at the time of the Mahapralaya and who did not have an opportunity to get liberated, they once again enter into the body of Mahavishnu. And at the time of creation, Mahavishnu, with his glance, impregnates the pradhana, and with his glance, all these living entities in the form of Mahatattva is impregnated into the material energy or Durga through Lord Shiva. And that is how the different living entities are then given different bodies based on the impressions of their subtle body or the mind. So whatever was the characteristic of their mind based on their activities, based on their karma, so all those factor in when deciding a body. So it is not just the universe which is a matter. It is also all these factors included. So does that answer your question?
Yes, Prabhuji. Actually, my doubt is like if since Krishna and Krishna, Rama, all of them appeared on this particular planet, to get a chance to be born in planet, and also in the on Punya Bhumi like India itself isn't considered as some sort of superior birth than like taking birth in other places? Or does the planet Earth has some special place in terms of all these creations, since or God does also appear in such kind of form in other places? That's what I wanted to understand.
Yeah. He appears. So I would be talking about this in great detail tomorrow. Actually, it is not that the Lord appears on the earth. He is actually present in every realm throughout the creation. We have no clue, but the Lord is actually present in all the planets, and He's being worshipped by all the citizens and the residents there. And this is a daily affair. Like if you go to the Swargaloka, Indra appears, and the moment Indra walks into the palace, the first thing he does is he worships the form of the Lord, who's seated there as Vaman Dev. So Indra is worshipping Vaman Dev. Then there is a certain tract of land towards the west, towards the east, where Bhumi Devi is worshipping the form of Varaha Dev. So that is also a heavenly tract of land towards the east of India, or the Bhumandala. And then further across, there is towards the west, there is an island where Hanuman is worshipping the form of Lord Ram. So the Lord is present in all these places, even on the Loka mountains, which are the far end regions of this universe. The Lord is present with all His associates. So the universe is populated with devotees of the Lord in every nook and corner.
Sanjay, there is a question in the chat. So if you can just open the chat and read the question.
Okay. I've just opened the chat. And I'm reading the question for everyone. As you said, universe creation is accident. No, I did not say universe creation is a. Do we have any story behind this or any information related to this? Why is the universe created? It would be great if you could share with us. Thank you so much. So, Pratap Prabhu, to answer your question, yes, the universe is not created by accident. In fact, it is created for the purpose, for everyone who wants to enjoy indifferently from the Lord. So, all of us, as I described in the class, we come from a higher dimension. We come from the spiritual world. Originally, we were all in Goloka Vrindavan, or in the spiritual world, or in some sort of Vaikunta planet. And we were associating with the Lord. But then we desired to associate separately. So a good analogy to understand this is in an orchestra, in an organized orchestra, there are different people playing their pieces, playing their musical instruments. And all that is coordinated by a conductor. So the conductor has the notes, and if all the people who are present in the orchestra, they have only one goal, and that is to follow the conductor. And whatever the conductor asks them to play, they all have to follow him. So the problem with this is sometimes there is one person who doesn't want to follow the conductor. He says, no, I decide to do something separate. I want to instead play my own thing. So at that point of time, the conductor decides to give him a separate room. And in that separate room, he is allowed to play whatever he wants. Another explanation for this is sometimes a child is curious and he's seeing that the parents are making preparations in the kitchen, and he also wants to imitate the parent. So the parents, they decide to buy him uh, a, a toy kitchen as such, where there are plastic utensils and plastic spoons and spatulas and all that. And the child then begins to imitate the parents. So the point is that all of us, we were originally in the spiritual realms, and we were associating with the Lord. But then we decided to associate by ourselves. That why should the Lord be the one who's enjoying? Rather, let me be the one who should enjoy. So the Lord uh, makes a special arrangement. So in that special arrangement, he through his material energy, he gives us the false ego to think that we are actually God, or we identify ourselves with this body. So when we identify ourselves with this body, then we have this separate virtual reality, or this artificial reality that, for example, I am Sanjay and I have parents and I live in Dubai and I need a home, and I need to have an education, and I need to make money. So then this false ego, it kind of helps the person, assists him in fulfilling his original desire of enjoying uh, with oneself. But the problem with that is that we are originally servants. We are not enjoyers, or we are not Purusha. So that's where the problem lies, which the Lord wants us to understand, but we don't want to understand because of our uh, position. So, as I was stating in this verse of Shikshashtakam, so that I can read it again for you. It's the translation. It says that I am your eternal servant, oh my dear Lord, but because of my fruit of acts, I have fallen into this horrible ocean of birth and death. So now you please be causelessly merciful to me, and you rescue me. So that is how we have come into the existence in this material realm. This whole uh, this whole material creation, this whole cosmology has been created simply for the soul to enjoy with different kinds of experiences. But ultimately, one needs to realize where they come from and how we have to return back to that level. So I hope that answers your question, Prabhu. Anyone else has any questions?